Federation and a presentation on the topic of suburban and rural areas, cycling on highways or cycle highways. So the floor is yours, Alexander. Thank you.
Thank you, Christoph. Good afternoon, everyone. Yes, I'm going to talk about cycling in suburban and rural areas. And I would like first to talk a bit why I think this could be an interesting topic, especially if we talk about future mobility. Then I will show some examples where people cycle on main roads and how this can be taken into account in road construction or reconstruction projects. And finally, I would like to present the emerging mobility product, cycle highways or fast cycle routes, how they are different from traditional cycle infrastructure and what are the benefits. First, why? Usually, traditionally, cycling is associated with urban mobility, especially in Western Europe and on the European level. But cycling, and it is correct that cycling can play very important role in the cities, and there is still a lot to do in the cities. But it happens also outside cities, in rural areas. There are many countries in Europe that over 50% of population still lives in rural areas. And villages are spaced just 5 kilometers or a few kilometers next to each other. There are singular farmsteads in between. So bicycle is a convenient way to visit your neighbor, to go to a school or to a shop. On this map of Hungary, all the red areas are the areas where cycling is the most common mode of daily transport. On the other hand, even people who live in cities, they like to go outside the city from time to time, and they often use a bike. According to a study by European Parliament, commissioned by European Parliament, there are more than 2 billion trips per year in cyclotourism trips per year in Europe. I picked up a picture from France because recently, 2 weeks ago, France was selected as the top cycling holiday destination on big tourism and travel industry fairs in Berlin. And finally, that's a bit of a new thing. There's growing popularity of electrically power-assisted bicycles. During the past 10 years, sales grew from 100,000 per year to around 2 million per year now. And if I'm not mistaken, that's about 10 times as much as electric cars now. And why does it matter? Because the e-bikes or pedelecs, they greatly extend the range of daily cycling. Usually we say that traditional bicycles are competitive up to 5, maybe 7 kilometers. And it's a perfect distance to cover a medium-sized European city, maybe up to 200, 300,000 inhabitants. But pedelecs can extend it to 10 kilometers, and the more powerful speed pedelecs even on to 20 kilometers on good quality infrastructure. And this is happening already. The small black numbers on this picture show some results from bike counters around Nijmegen in the Netherlands. In the center, you can find most bicycles in the center, of course, on more than 6,000 on a single cycle path. But if you go to a motorway interchange on the outskirts of the city, it's still 4,000. And then if you go halfway to the next city, to Arnhem, it's 1,000 or 2,000 on several parallel cycling paths in the middle of nowhere. So where people cycle on main roads, where you can find a cyclist on a motorway or an expressway. First and most obvious example is when there is no alternative. For example, there's a bridge across a major river. This is River Lagan in Sweden. It's not a very big river, but the next, to go to the next bridge, you would have to make some 20 kilometers. So the tourists cycling along the Swedish coasts take the E6 motorway bridge. For daily cycling, roads connecting suburbs or satellite towns with the main city are the most important. And in this case, usually you can find some alternative, but if there's no developed regional cycling network, then usually the alternative roads are also very busy, very crowded, and often in much worse state, more narrow and with damaged surface. In many corners of the EU, we still have many legacy roads that follow the historical trace and connect towns and villages and have settlements and workplaces developed along them. This is part of the Trans-European TEN-T road network in Lithuania, but it's also the only asphalted road in the area, so all different modes of transport are sharing it. And this adding cycle and pedestrian paths to this kind of roads, it's still a very low-hanging fruit for road safety in many countries. Finally, we have many cases of design or signing faults, and we go back to the very center of the European Union. This is Belgium, close to the border with the Netherlands, between Maastricht and Liège. And this, in the back, you can maybe see a cycling path coming from Maastricht. It crosses two borders, and here it connects to a motorway ramp. And the way it is signed, it's very easy to enter the motorway by bike. And I find it an interesting example that it's sometimes easier to coordinate across country borders than across different modes of transport. Apart from cycling along the roads, there is sometimes a need to cross to the other side of the road, so a sufficient density of safe and comfortable crossings is also necessary. And a special challenge is to integrate this kind of crossing in the interchange areas. This is a good example. It's E20 at the suburbs of Gothenburg. But unfortunately, we also have a lot of very bad ones. This is Szeged, Hungary. On the right, you can see a well-developed network of cycle paths in the city itself. On the left, there is a long stretch of cycling path along National Road 55. And in the middle, we have this big hole. And this hole is because of the construction of motorway connecting Budapest and Belgrade. And a cycle crossing was not included in the interchange design. Someone forgotten it, then there were deadlines, and now we have a problem for the next 20 or 30 years. And if you go back to the one of the first slides, this is one of the red areas on the map of Hungary where maybe 50% of people use bicycle for as main mode of transport. And unfortunately, this happens over and over in different motorway projects. This, again, expressway enters a city. There are cycle paths along the city roads, but there is no connection across the interchange. What can be done about it? Last year, we prepared a package of proposals that cover different aspects of the EU regulatory framework for road infrastructure safety management, and how you can efficiently integrate cycling infrastructure in a road project. I don't, of course, have time to present all of it today. I would just like to show one example of what we would like to see more. It's to exploit the synergy with service roads, because many big infrastructure projects include reconstructing some local roads, either to maintain access to housing, agriculture, or forestry, or for maintenance purposes. And these roads typically carry very low amounts of traffic, and they can be safely served by cyclists or pedestrians. It's just they're often not connected, then they don't form continuous links. Last topic, cyclohighways. I included some French and Spanish names here because I think the translation in the program does not include this express or rapid component. And the cyclohighways are fast cycle routes, are a consequence of cycle journeys getting longer, and it's no longer good enough to plan the cycle network on the level of single municipality. So this is about going up to the regional level, and cycle highways can form a sort of a backbone of regional cycle network. The picture shows a part of the planned and partially under construction cycle highway network in Flanders. How do they look like? They can be just wide cycle paths. In this case, this is along the 4 meters wide cycle path, quite close to a motorway. They can also follow railroad, they can follow canals, rivers, but they can be completely independent. But they can also utilize or include elements of local roads that don't carry much car traffic and are upgraded to so-called bicycle street standard. One common denominator, because of the longer trip distance, the cycle highways should provide slightly higher quality in terms of design speed, width, and lack of interruptions. And this is still a relatively new concept, and we at ECF are currently together with some 50 partners from municipalities, regions, industry, academic, trying to investigate its potential. One of the first results on the European level is a map of potential of cycle highways. So this is like the first very rough estimate of where there would be enough cyclists to justify constructing this kind of infrastructure. And you can, of course, see some agglomerations in this picture, like Paris, Berlin, Hamburg, but also some more interesting structures. So, for example, if you look at northern Italy, you can see Via Emilia here. It's an ancient Roman road, and the cities were developed maybe 15, 20 kilometers apart from each other, and there were smaller settlements in between, so it creates a lot of potential for trips in the cycling distance. On the local level, we test different ideas. This is, for example, province Gelderland is experimenting with park and bike solution. So this is Park and Ride Nijmegen North. And on the left side, you see the motorway. On the right, Rhine-Waalpad cycle highway. And they just added a public bike rental station to this Park and Ride facility. And this is interesting to find out. Maybe some of the visitors to the city would be interested in changing to bike on the last 5 kilometers instead of bus to see whether to avoid the traffic jams and problems with parking in the city itself. We see maybe it can become a part of this integrated mobility solution. There are some attempts to quantify the benefits of cycle highway. There's, for example, in the feasibility study for the Radschnellweg 1 in the Ruhr area, was estimated that it can replace between 20 and 50,000 of motorized trips. In the Flemish cycle highways that are already completed, this bridge is already completed, so there was a cost-benefit analysis, and depending on the scenario, the benefits in 20 years period outweighed the costs between 2 and 14 times. So if you are interested in this topic, I would like to invite you to one of our cycle highway academies where the people working in this area meet on workshops and exchange practical experiences. The next one will be in Copenhagen in May. I would like you to remember four things from my presentation. One, cycling is everywhere, not only in urban areas. Two, if you're designing or commissioning a design for a road reconstruction project, there is probably a need to include some elements of cycling infrastructure. Third, there's this new concept of cycle highways, which on one side is might be an interesting new mobility option for agglomerations and regions. And on the other hand, it's also a place to test some new ideas or technical innovations. And the last thing, the next Cycle Highway Academy will be in Copenhagen, 24th and 25th of May. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Alexander. Are there any questions to our panelists? Yes?
Just a little question. You were more or less giving the estimation of the number of trips you can have on longer distance, let's say the 20 kilometers. How do you base these estimations of potential users?
This increase in range are based this on a study done by the German Ministry for Environment when they were considering some support for electric bikes.
So there is no real, and it's only in Germany, because also the other map that you showed, that there are possible ways all over Europe. Is that based on which data? I mean, on which kind of users analysis?
This is not country specific, this European map. We're trying to use the data that is available across all the European Union, so the population density data on a grid of 1 kilometer. We took the assumptions from existing studies that the potential for cycle trips is highest around 5 to 7 kilometers, and then it slowly drops down to around 0 at 30 kilometers. I can check for specific studies that was included in this. And of course, if you have a specific data for your country, then you can develop a much more detailed model. I know that for Germany and for Netherlands, there are more detailed maps than that, but this we wanted to cover to have a low entry tool.
I think there was another question at the back, or? Okay, so thank you very much, Alexander. So we now go to our next speaker. Next speaker will be Maria Cristina Marolda from the European Commission, DG Mobility and Transport. And I think, Maria Cristina, that you are going to ride once again your battle horse, I should say, talking about need of research and
yes.